I literally reinvented the wheel just to see if it actually has any advantages over a regular one. You see, I always wanted a fat bike with a low sitting position, wide handlebars, and a rear tire so wide that the bike just stands up on its own. And of course, it needs to be electric, specifically powered by standard 18-volt Makita power tool batteries. Since this is still technically going to be a bicycle, it sounds reasonable to use bicycle wheels, right? To be more precise, I'm using a pair of 24 inches rear wheels, which you usually find on smaller bikes. I chose rear wheels on purpose because of these threaded hubs. The plan is to permanently join two wheels together with a custom spacer. Down at the local bike shop, I pick up these single-speed fixed sprockets. They have 16 teeth, but most importantly, they have the perfect matching thread to screw right onto the wheel hubs. Throw a piece of round steel pipe in between the wheels, and this thing might actually start looking like a proper spacer. Now, since the pipe and the sprockets are made of steel, welding them together is the easy part. The tricky part, making sure everything is perfectly perpendicular. The pipe needs to be cut perfectly square, and the sprockets have to be absolutely centered. To mark a perfect cutting line on a round surface, you have two options. There is an old school method where you wrap a piece of paper around it, twist it, and try to eyeball the edges. Or you can do it the modern way. Draw a couple of circles in CAD and 3D print a custom marking template in just a few minutes. I don't know if it's just my problem-solving approach, but a 3D printer is definitely a cheat code in a modern workshop. The marking ring doesn't just give you a solid reference line, it also lets you double-check how straight your handheld angle grinder cut actually was. Once I verified the squareness, I 3D printed another pair of rings to help me center the sprockets on the pipe. They are printed in a regular PLA, so they're absolutely going to melt during the welding. But at that point, who cares? Their sacrificial job was already done by second they aligned and clamped the sprockets. With a quick tack weld on each tooth, both sprockets were permanently fused, and the custom spacer could simply be twisted on the two wheels. Now, these two wheels finally have the width I wanted, but we're missing a pretty crucial component, a thread right down in the middle. So I walked into a local tire shop and asked if they minded if I grab a used car tire that wasn't road legal anymore. Not only did I score a free tire, but they actually suggested I take the whole pile off their hands. Apparently, they have to pay a few bucks per tire just to recycle them. Well, consider me a recycler. I took a utility knife and carefully sliced open the sidewalls on both sides. This should give us plenty of room to stretch over my newly formed twin rim setup. To make installation a bit easier, I deflated both bike tires. This trick worked flawlessly for the first rim. For the second one, I've tried even creative trick in the book, but the real MVP was the zip tie method. I just kept wiggling, squeezing, and pressing all along the edge until it finally popped into place. I inflated both inner tubes back to their operating pressure, which perfectly stretched and centered the outer car tire shell. And boom, that's what I call a badass ultra-wide bicycle wheel. For the frame, I scored this old full suspension bike on Facebook Marketplace for basically scrap metal value. Sometimes I feel like official sanitation worker on Facebook Marketplace because I keep collecting all these old, beaten up bikes that have no business being on the streets, just to bring them back to life in my projects. For this build, I only need the two main frame sections and the rear shock. The rest of this bike is heading straight to the scrap pile. I specifically picked this style of frame because of the independent rear swing arm. It looked like it will be the easiest layout to modify for a super wide rear wheel. After chopping out the center section and using a few scrap blocks of wood to mock up the ideal position and ride height, the next step seemed totally straightforward. Time to cut off what's too long and weld it in a 20mm steel tube with a 90 degrees elbow to mimic the curve of the tire. After some quality time with a welder and a grinder, the new rear fork looks incredibly clean. It still keeps that original bicycle aesthetics while giving our massive tire plenty of room to spin freely. Now, I really like the lines of the original bike frame, but it's way too short, meaning the diagonal tube needs to be extended. Luckily, the donor frame already provided everything I needed. The seat stay tube is the exact same shape as the lower diagonal frame tube, so I cut it out as clean as possible to preserve the rest of the metal while maximizing its length. By the way, it's just me, or does everyone else use their angle grinder discs down to absolute minimum? Drop a like if you do. To square up this this pipe, I actually used the paper wrapping trick because of its irregular shape. Designing a 3D printed template for this specific tube will have taken too long. And just like that, we gain an extra 24 centimeters of frame length. All that was left to align everything precisely, welded it up, and grind it down for a seamless look. I'm honestly thrilled with the result. I managed to control the heat warping and kept the entire tube dead straight. So the frame now has a decent length, but the front fork position looked completely wrong. Honestly, I didn't like the original fork anyway. It's way too bulky, and the built-in shock absorbers lift the entire front end too high. Instead, I opted for a rigid, shockless front fork. It's shorter, which lets the frame sit lower, and it has a clean, minimalistic look that fits the vibe perfectly. Because it came from a totally different bike, I had to cut and weld a new head tube to accommodate it. While I was at it, I corrected the front fork mounting angle from this to this. The fat bike is finally taking its true chopper shape, and I knew one thing for sure: this thing is definitely not going to be propelled by pedal power. Though, to be fair, putting pedals on the front wheel will look wildly unique. But I'm going down a slightly more modern route and using this 36 volts 500 watts electric hub motor. This kit is used and I actually got it for free from a friend. That means I don't mind the fact that the entire wiring situation is a total disaster and needs a completely overhaul. It was also completely missing a power source. My plan? Use these 18-volt Makita batteries that I revived and brought back to life in one of my previous videos. If you haven't seen that one yet, definitely check it out. It might help you to give a second chance to your faulty Makita batteries. Since I have a ton of these batteries laying around, I quickly designed a custom dual battery holder to run them in series, giving us a perfect 36-volt system for our motor and controller. I spent less than an hour designing it and sent it straight to my newest and by far the largest 3D printer in the workshop, the bambulab H2S. This machine is the next step in their H-series flagship lineup, boosting a massive 340 by 320 by 340 mm build volume. It's not a perfect cube, but it's huge enough to fit most of my mechanical assemblies on a single plate. And the single nozzle design lets you utilize every single millimeter of that print area. bambulab printers are famous for many reasons, but my favorite is their out-of-the-box reliability. You unbox it, set it up, and it just works. At this stage, I just want high-quality printed parts without configuration headaches. But the real reason to stay on my desk is the ecosystem, specifically the AMS2 Pro and AMS HT. This isn't just for multicolor prints, it's about serious filament management. The new drying cycle in the AMS actually vents moisture out instead of just recirculating it, keeping my engineering filaments factory fresh without me playing babysitter. I also appreciate the small practical design details. The chamber floor is completely flat, so sweeping out filament debris takes literally 2 seconds. A massive upgrade over my older X1 Carbon. And since it's big, heavy machine, the sturdy handles integrated right into the frame make rearranging the workshop way safer and easier. This specific combo unit comes with a laser module, meaning the front door features lightweight plastic with a green protective laser filter. It gives off a subtle, futuristic green glow in the dark, which looks awesome during late-night shop sessions. There is also a thoughtful LED progress bar at the base of the bed to check your print status at a glance, plus 2 bright LED strips along the sides of the chamber, perfect for monitoring prints and capturing crisp, high-quality time-lapses. I know people debate how close these manufacturer ecosystems are. Sure, it's not an open-source playground for tweaking firmware and troubleshooting bugs, but as a maker, I rather spend my time building projects than fixing my tools. If you're looking to upgrade your workflow and get back to making what matters, I left a link in the description below. The custom holder was designed around those super cheap Makita 18-volt battery terminal blocks. They just snap right into place and can be bridged together using standard spade connectors. It's a great universal design to adapt tool batteries to pretty much anything you can dream up. Alright, now that the electronic package is fully assembled and tested, we can begin mounting everything onto our modified frame. First challenge: this hub motor wheel is meant for a much wider fork, so it definitely isn't a bolt-on solution. But since I got this entire second-hand kit for free, I'd much rather do a few modifications than buy a new motor. A couple of cuts with an angle grinder and a slight bend to flare out both fork legs created the perfect clearance for the motor. You guessed it! If it's too thick, let's make it a fit. After welding it back up and grinding flush, you can barely tell anything was ever modified here. To make this bike stop, I added 160mm brake rotor, which simply secures to the hub motor using a threaded adapter. For 20 bucks, I bought a brand new Shimano hydraulic brake set. The only thing missing? A mounting bracket on the front fork. Good old-fashioned cardboard cat design came to the rescue. After some precise measurements and a bit of welding, the caliper mount was locked in place. This finalized the front assembly, so let's address the rear shock situation. Depending on where I position it, I can completely alter the stance of the bike, making the overall frame ride higher or lower. After some testing, I found the sweet spot and welded it in. Now we have a properly functioning rear suspension again. The last missing piece is the seat. I had this old bar stool top laying around that I thought would blend nicely into the build. Once again, I used some scrap wood for shimming and did some classical eyeballing until I was happy with the position. Obviously, I can't weld directly to a wooden seat, so I used blue masking tape to trace the template and recreated the mounting base out of a 5mm steel strip. It perfectly matches the contours of the seat bottom and will be mounted right about here. At the back, I tacked two straight 20mm tubes, while for the front mounts I reused a pair of offcuts from the original bike rear end. The bottom of the seat was already a bit chewed up from previous projects, so while the welded frame was cooling down, I ripped off the old upholstery and wrapped it in a fresh new layer. It's barely visible once mounted, but it's that extra mile and attention to detail that I always try to bring to my builds. And that was very last fabrication step on the frame, meaning we can strip everything down for the paint. I decided to go with a clean two-tone color combo, turquoise Royal 6034 for the main frame and metallic gray for the rear swing arm. It just felt right to visually highlight that the rear section is separate and has its own independent suspension. Additionally, I painted the rear wheel silver spokes and rims. This creates a semi-transparent illusion when the wheel is spinning, and it contrasts beautifully with the black tire. Quite a big difference. To finalize the front end, I need to install the foot pegs. I made them by simply welding a washer and a nut inside a 40mm round tube. By threading it on, it locks itself down and secures the hub motor axle at the same time. On the right side, the situation was a bit trickier because I had to route the main motor harness. First, I pulled all the wires out through the peg mounting nut, and once the peg was tightened down, I looped the wires back and routed them into a precut opening. I even used parts of the internal frame tubing to keep the wiring completely hidden. The motor and throttle cables run all the way through the frame, popping out right under the seat. This is also the ideal location for our speed controller, so I plugged everything and mounted it cleanly. As for the battery holder, I slightly redesigned it by reducing the number of mounting holes and adding a few dedicated channels for wiring. The middle channel connects both batteries in series, while two channels at the back route the main power leads outwards. All the connections were soldered to ensure a permanent, reliable contact. Finally, I insulated and sealed everything up using these custom 3D printed caps and a few drops of CA glue. Using M5 hex bolts, the battery holder was secured directly opposite speed controller, and after plugging the main XT60 connector, the seat could be bolted back down. The bike is completely finished. Let's grab a pair of fully charged Makita 18V batteries, slap them in the cradle, and see how this monstrosity actually rides. Even though this motor is only rated for 500 watts, to my surprise, it pulls incredibly well. Of course, it's not going to break any land speed records, but the bike like this isn't about the top speed. It's all about the cool factor and enjoying a unique cruise that puts a smile on your face and turns heads on the street. I mean, it's not every day you see an electric chopper that doesn't even need a kickstand to stay upright. And as for the riding range, well, technically it could be limitless. You ride until the batteries drain, pull up a fresh pair of 18V Makitas out of your backpack, swap them out in a matter of seconds, and keep on rolling. Alternatively, I could easily scale up the design for the holder to accommodate 4 or even 6 batteries at once, which will instantly give us up to 3 times the runtime. Oh, and that independent rear swing arm? It just planted a brand new idea in my head about building an actively adjustable air ride suspension. Is that something you guys want to see? Drop your vote down in the comments and I'll see you in the next one.